Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition and we turn now to poem 639, My Portion is Defeat Today. Now right away, this will take us back to an earlier study of ours. We're back to poem 67. You will, I'm sure, remember it. Success is counted sweetest by those who ne'er succeed. To comprehend a nectar requires sorest need. Not one of all the purple host who took the flag today can tell the definition so clear of victory as he, defeated, dying, on whose forbidden ear the distant strains of triumph burst, agonized, clear. Now, this poem was published for the first time in the Saturday Review of Literature, 9 March of 1929. And it is a poem that requires of us a single question. Who is the speaker of this poem? That will be for us, I think, the first major challenge as we get into this. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily's our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've already worked through our set of introductory comments. I'm hopeful that you've already worked through the preceding 638 poems. We just finished with 638, To My Small Hearth His Fire Came. Now, many have read this poem as one of the few comments Emily ever made on the American Civil War. The date of 1862 is usually given for the writing of this poem. It is in many ways as well another theodicy, Theodicy. The question in our Big Five, the last of them, the question of pain and suffering. And what does it mean to lose? What does it mean to be defeated? And in what ways do you have a certain perspective because of defeat? It is as well, note, a comparison poem between the winner and the loser, if you will. Okay? And I would argue that maybe this is one of the most Whitman-esque of Emily's poems. When we read this poem, we'll be reminded of our study, and again, that study was called Talks with Walt at learnstrong.net, where we did all the poems, every poem of Whitman's Leaves of Grass. You'll remember out of that section, the drum taps section, which sung the songs of war. You'll remember Whitman, of course, saw that up close and personal as a nurse during the Civil War. This poem will remind us a lot of some of Whitman's drum tap poems. Let's read it. My portion is defeat today, a paler luck than victory. Less peons, fewer bells. The drums don't follow me with tunes. Defeat a somewhat slower means, more arduous than balls. 'Tis populous with bone and stain, and men too straight to stoop again, and piles of solid moan, and chips of blank in boyish eyes, and scraps of prayer, and death's surprise stamped visible in stone. They're somewhat prouder over there. The trumpets tell it in the air. How different victory to him who has it, and the one who to have had it would have been contender to die. Now, can we just marvel at the fact that this is a young lady who spends almost her entire adult life inside of her father's house, and yet somehow is able to capture something as compelling as what happens on a battlefield? We cannot help at 3A but think about, of course, Stephen Crane and Red Badge of Courage. He wrote that novel after the American Civil War. Of course, he talked with a lot of veterans to describe what it's like to be in the middle of the battle. And many of those vets said, you got it, you captured it. And a number of vets have read this one and understand this one as well, as she captured it. She captured what it's like to recognize two things. We lost, and I'm the one responsible for it. And that second one may be harder than the first one. It's hard enough to lose, but it's even harder to imagine you're the one responsible for the loss, or the one that was in charge of the loss, if not responsible. Many have read this poem as the spokesperson to be a general in a battle. You can think of it that way. Notice the intimacy of this. Notice it's my portion, not our. My portion. And yet, the poem seems to be describing our defeat. And yet, notice this is taken very personally, as in, my portion is defeat, dash, today, dash. The immediacy of this poem. In other words, we're seeing it in real time. Okay? Okay? We can't help but think, as we've said in other lectures elsewhere, of what happened in that summer right before July the 4th of 1863 when Gettysburg happens. All those dead, as we said, 10 New Orleans in 3 days. It's a lot of dead. And there had to be some people in charge who survived that experience. There were. And how did they feel about the defeat? A paler luck than victory. It is interesting the use of the word luck. So much of our life, victory, failure, or loss, is contingent on this thing called luck. Less paeans. Paeans here, the hymns of thanks that used to be given to Apollo, the god Apollo. Fewer bells. In other words, there's no celebrations. The drums don't follow me. And again, I can't help but think of drum taps as I hear this word drums. With tunes. In other words, there's no celebration, right? There's no, yay, you're a victor. Defeat, back to the first line. Defeat, notice the repetition. A somewhat slower means. And then again, more arduous than balls. Now, balls, of course, here are remarkable. I mean, think of it. If you have a victory, you probably have a victory ball, if you will, a celebration. But of course, there's also this thing called cannonballs. Notice how Emily can play. See, because she doesn't tell us which balls, so now you as a reader have to decide, because both of them could be cannonballs kept me from my victory balls, is another way to think of it, if you will. 'Tis populous. What is populous? Well, the defeat, namely the battlefield. With what? Bone and stain. Right? I mean, those who have spent time in actual contests of theater of war will often report, as one of my students who went on to serve in the military said, I grew up on Call of Duty, and what I experienced was nothing like Call of Duty. Beginning with the smells that you never can capture in a video game. And of course, there's a whole different landscape at the end of a battle or a contest. And of course, in the American Civil War, where so much of the catastrophe was just random shots and explosives and the like, as often battles often are. Notice bone and stain. And men too straight to stoop again. Only Emily could come up with a line like that. Well, okay, I'll give it to Walt, obviously, in drum taps. He plays a similar game. Men too straight to stoop again. Why? Well, they can't stoop anymore because they're laid out on the battlefield, as we will do, of course, in the American Civil War, laying out the dead, right? In other words, they can't stoop ever again. They would like to stoop, but they can't. Okay, again, the use of the word stoop is compelling. And piles of solid moan. Whoa! I mean, this is truly amazing line. For a woman who never saw a single battle of the Civil War and heard maybe some of it, and maybe read a little of it, but certainly to invent a line like this, piles of solid moan. The idea, of course, of the wounded who are begging for some kind of comfort, and there's so many of them, and many of them, of course, lying on top of each other. We know this was the case in some of the major battles of the Civil War, certainly Gettysburg. And Whitman himself in drum taps writing about this moaning that will go on into the night so that nobody can sleep because there's this constant, this incessant, painful, suffering moaning, the begging for somehow the escape of death. She's not done. Notice, it's very Whitman-esque, this kind of listing with the repetition, the anaphora of and. It's very Whitman-esque. And ships of blank in boyish eyes. Again, just, I mean, it's amazing to think. Walt Whitman and Emily Dickinson lived at the same time, but never met, and never read each other's stuff. And yet, she's channeling what Whitman does in drum taps, calling the young men boys. And, of course, the scraps of prayer. I mean, think about what that one means to you. As between the moaning, there's the praying, right? And death's surprise, stamped visible in stone. Of course, we think about the tombstones. Many have said, you can't read a poem like this and then not go to that famous cemetery in Arlington and not pause for a moment and see all that stone and recognize that stone is there so you can be here. That's what she's, of course, going to argue. There is something profound about this loss. And the speaker of this poem, maybe the one in charge, is recognizing, I got nothing in the form of victory. Speaking, of course, the speaker will finish by, there's somewhat prouder over there. Now, there it is, right? In other words, if we're on a battlefield, there's the victors and the losers, as in success is counted sweetest. Not one of all the purple hosts who took the flag today can tell the definitions of clear victory as he defeated God. Somewhat prouder over there. To say somewhat prouder suggests shame. Can we just put that in our notes? In other words, they're proud over there. Well, what's that make me because I'm the loser? Well, I'm ashamed. The trumpets tell it in the air. So here we are to a different kind of sound. Maybe now this takes us back to the celebration balls that are being referenced earlier possibly. And what is it the trumpets tell? How different. And that, of course, is the key word of the poem, isn't it? Victory, notice capitalized, to him who has it. As opposed to what? Well, the one who too have had it, notice the complicated syntax here. The one who too have had it would have been contender. In other words, I wanted it really badly. I wanted to contend for victory. No go. And then the dash. And then to die. And then the dash. And of course Hamlet, Act 3, to be or not to be, that is the question, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune and take arms against the sea of troubles of my opposing. And then what does he say? To die, to sleep perchance to dream. There's the rub. This to die is going to be an echo from, Emily's love of that great Shakespeare play. At 2A, what are we going to do with a poem like this? I think her argument is that victory and defeat are always about perspective, right? You can't have one without the other. And the victor, of course, will almost never think about the defeated. But of course, the defeated always thinks about the victor, right? There's that power in being the loser, understanding what actually victory is. You could make the argument this is not a poem about defeat. It's a poem about victory, but more particularly about the victory he doesn't have and he will never experience. Or, if you wish to read it a second way, and let's go to 2B, there's clearly another way to read this poem. And that is to say that we're not talking about physical action in war, but rather metaphysical action in war. In other words, what is it like to have to go through that experience of loss? And any reader has, of course, experienced what that's like. I was supposed to win. No. And all of a sudden, now I understand what victory is all about. Not because I have it, but because I envy it, or I wish for it. I would be a contender for it, but it didn't happen for me. Of course, think about as well how action becomes object in this brilliant line, piles of solid moan. I mean, that line alone, most of us as poets would give, our whole lifetime of writing poetry to come up with one line like that, and Emily seems to reproduce it over and over again. At 3A, well, of course, Walt Whitman's drum taps, go back and look at it at learnstrong.net. We've given full lectures on every one of those poems. They deserve our reading and our rereading again and again and again. So many in our culture are now calling for things like civil war. Walt Whitman's spirit, and I think here Emily's spirit as well, says, before you jump to a phrase like that, you might want to read a few poems written by somebody who lived through that experience and gives you a prism on what that actually looks like in boys' eyes, and obviously girls' eyes as well. We think of other great war poems and, the importance of them. Think about Wilfred Owen's Dulce as well as Anthem for Doomed Youth. Think about McCrae's In Flanders Fields. Think about Sasson's Dreams. Think about Tennyson's Charge of the Light Brigade. We've given lectures on all of those at learnstrong.net. Finally, to own a poem like this, what's your worst defeat that you ever had to endure? And is it true that in that defeat, you actually begin to understand victory? Thank you.